It's a beautiful bacon day, Cookie Crusaders. Today we're going to be talking about the high-level bosses and the teams that we're running to help mitigate against their changes and challenges. My first one that's pretty fun, pretty favorite, Blackberry Cookie has entered the meta. Now, we are using attack speed toppings on Blackberry and on Rye Cookie. We are using cooldown on Oyster and searing on Cherry Blossom and Vampire. We are running robes and the clock and the scroll to get as many activations, as much speed against the avatar as possible. So we're going to go ahead, level 16, run the boss for this. This is the strategy that carries over. Oyster as soon as possible. Cherry Blossom right before or right after the banner starts. And then Blackberry, Rye, Vampire in that order. If you have the proper cooldowns that are needed, your timing will work perfectly to set everyone up and make it so that Cherry Blossom lives, because Cherry Blossom will be the target in this instance. And because of all that attack speed and speed overall from the toppings that we have, no one dies to the laser in the first round. Now, sadly, at level 16, the other cookies I do have do end up dying to the overall damage that's coming from the avatar. But, as you can see, we're still dishing out quite a huge amount of damage to the avatar itself. So, let's look at this. We got 36 million. So 5 million from Blackberry, 4 million from Oyster, Cherry Blossom 6 million, 7 million from Rye, and 10 million from Vampire. Vampire can go higher. I just need better toppings on Vampire to make it work for this one. But the fact that the rare cookie is doing 5 million damage, it's because of how many specific hits are going against the boss from Blackberry, and the speed that we put on makes sure that the tombstones are cleared as well. So it's very helpful. Now, you can run this with a healer like Pomegranate to try and increase the power of everybody instead of Oyster. So if you're like, I don't have Oyster, go ahead and run Pomegranate instead. You're gonna lose out on a little bit of damage because Blackberry and Oyster combo really well to put critical percents on your team without having to have critical toppings. So therefore, and the crit damage is lower too because of Oyster's ability. So you're going to lose out on that, but you will be getting the Pomegranate attack buff instead. So there's a couple ways to run that. So that's a very fun and interesting team, and it's working well. Now, this one's a little bit more precise. So this team, you'll notice how we don't have the clock at all. The reason is, at the later levels of the Abyss, you have the ink attack that pretty much wipes the entire team. Doesn't matter your damage resistance or your critical resistance. It happens right after they spit out the cookie from Devour. And so the setup here, we're just using as much AoE power and injury as possible to just shut down the entire setup. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the timing specifically. So as we go in, we're going to get the attack boost from Pomegranate. We're going to send everybody the first time. We're going to turn auto off. We're going to just spam Pomegranate to make sure that the healing happens. And then once your team gets pushed just far enough back, which would be right here, start up the skills. Reason is you should be able to avoid the ink attack completely because you're out of range. You will probably lose Dark Cacao depending on how fast your cooldown is for Pomegranate, for the healing and everything. So it just really depends on the cooldown of Pomegranate to how that works and how that goes. But as you can see, because we don't have the clock, we're not getting our skills off as often, but we are getting off very powerful skills against a lot of the blobs. So you can see here 44 million damage, and everyone's doing a really good job. Clotted is doing an amazing job for sure. So these two setups are very precise. Precise timings, precise setups with the toppings. That's going to be your biggest focus. Obviously, if you don't have high labs, if you don't have the guild buffs, if you don't have cookie promotions and levels, you're probably going to struggle at these boss levels. I'm just being honest. These bosses at these levels are now pretty oppressive. And as you can see, we have 2 days left in 12 hours. And I still have 2 tickets left to use, so we're going to have even more powerful bosses to fight at that higher level. And honestly, I don't think I'm going to make a video guide for those levels because it's just really how much damage can you do as quick as possible before your entire team gets wiped out by these bosses. Now the Red Velvet team, I'm not going to really go into it because it's the same team and it hasn't changed for the strategy. It's just a specific amount of damage you do. You should be roughly getting around 29 to 30 million if you're doing it correctly. But there's no real change on that boss that I need to cover that changed from the last time. That's the one thing about Red Velvet is that the setup for the higher levels, you just do as much damage as quick as possible. That's really all you can do. But I hope this is helpful for you guys. I'm going to be working on PvP guides next, as I feel that I've covered very in depth for these bosses, so that you guys have the best setup, best capabilities that you can, and hopefully you find a lot of ways to get these teams running and working. The fact that Blackberry's in one of the teams, I love that. Truly awesome. Either way, thank you so much for stopping by. Leave all your feedback in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinions, the teams you're running, any suggestions or trade outs. I'd love to hear it all. Either way, thank you so much for stopping by and have a wonderful day.